The coastline looks peaceful. The ocean is calm. The cities are alive. Millions of people are going about their lives. But beneath them, a massive fault is quietly storing energy. When it finally breaks, the ground could shake for minutes. The coastline could suddenly drop more than 6 feet, and then the Pacific Ocean could come crashing toward America. Entire communities could have only minutes to escape. And the most terrifying part? Scientists know this has happened before, because the next time the Earth moves here, everything could change. Off the coast of Northern California, stretching north for more than 620 miles to Vancouver Island, lies a silent, underwater boundary. This is the Cascadia Subduction Zone. To understand the threat, we must look at the slow mechanical struggle occurring miles beneath the sea floor. This region sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire, a massive belt of seismic activity wrapping around the ocean. Here, 2 colossal pieces of the Earth's crust are locked in a slow-motion collision. An oceanic plate, called the Juan de Fuca, is moving steadily eastward, descending beneath the North American continent. This is subduction, where one tectonic plate is forced down beneath another. The Juan de Fuca plate moves at about 1.6 inches every year. That is roughly the speed at which human fingernails grow. It seems negligible, but over centuries, that movement adds up. Under normal circumstances, the plates would slide past each other. But here, the boundary is jammed. Extreme friction has caused the 2 plates to become fused together, a process known as frictional locking. Think of it like a heavy wooden door being forced closed against a rough carpet. The door stops moving, but the hand pushing it keeps applying pressure. As the subducting plate continues its relentless push, the locked boundary cannot slip. Instead, the edge of the North American continent bends, buckling and warping under the immense strain. This stored energy cannot accumulate forever. Eventually, the friction will fail. When it does, the locked boundary will snap back in a violent, catastrophic motion. This is a megathrust earthquake, the most powerful type of seismic event on the planet, occurring right where these plates meet. Because of the immense length of this fault, Cascadia has the physical capability to unleash a magnitude 9+ earthquake. It does not always rupture all at once. Sometimes, only a partial segment breaks. But at other times, the entire fault line rips open. For generations, modern cities grew along this coast under the assumption that the ground was stable. There were no written records of any local disasters, but a warning was written in the earth itself. How could scientists prove a giant prehistoric catastrophe occurred here when there was no written history to record it? For centuries, the coastal communities of the Pacific Northwest lived with a history preserved in spoken memory rather than written archives. Long before European settlers arrived, the sovereign nations of this coast documented a massive physical disruption. The Ho and Quinault peoples passed down histories of a night when the ground shook so violently that no one could stand, and the ocean rushed inland, destroying entire villages. Farther north, Makah accounts spoke of a sudden flood that cut off their peninsula. To the south, Tillamook records detailed a great water that swept over the hills. These oral traditions served as precise, place-based records of a massive coastal emergency, operating as historical record rather than folklore. The physical proof of these accounts lay hidden along the tidal flats of Washington and Oregon. Geologist Brian Atwater began investigating a strange anomaly along the coast. Vast stands of gray, dead western red cedars, standing rooted in the salt marshes. At places like the Neskowin Beach, these ghost forests stood as silent markers of a sudden change. To understand why they died, Atwater dug into the muddy riverbanks at low tide. What he discovered was a distinct geological sequence. Beneath the modern marsh grass lay a layer of dark organic peat, the ancient forest floor where the trees once grew. Directly on top of this forest floor was a sharp band of clean ocean sand. Above the sand lay thick estuary mud. This sequence revealed a dramatic event. The dry land had dropped rapidly, plunging roughly 6.5 feet in a single moment. As the coastline sank below sea level, a massive wave rushed inland, burying the forest floor in tidal sand. Salt water overwhelmed the roots, killing the ancient cedars. The final piece of this ecological puzzle came from the wood itself. Scientists used dendrochronology to analyze the growth rings of the preserved stumps, comparing them to living trees inland. Every single drowned cedar showed normal growth through the late summer of 1700. But when the spring of 1700 arrived, none of these trees produced a new ring. They had all died together during the quiet months of that winter. The physical earth and the human memory of the coast had aligned. Across the Pacific, on the coast of Japan, detailed chronicles from the Edo period recorded a strange disaster. On the morning of January 27th, 1700, a series of waves suddenly struck the Sanriku coast. Water surged into bays, flooding buildings, ruining salt kilns, and damaging ships. The documented waves measured between 3 and 16 feet high. But there was a profound mystery. In Japan, the ground had not shaken. Tsunamis were well understood phenomena, always preceded by the violent shaking of an earthquake. This time, there was only the rising water. The Japanese called it an orphan tsunami, a wave with no felt parent. For nearly 3 centuries, this orphan tsunami remained an unsolved historical anomaly. Then, Japanese modeler Kenji Satake began working backward from the ancient logs. By analyzing the recorded water arrival, inundation depths, and wave heights at 7 different coastal stations, Satake designed numerical simulations to recreate the propagation across the open ocean. Tsunami waves travel across the deep ocean at speeds of roughly 500 miles per hour. Satake's models tracked the path backward. To produce waves of that height on the far side of the Pacific, the source had to be a massive displacement of the seafloor in the Pacific Northwest. The travel time calculations showed the wave took roughly 9 hours to make the crossing. This mathematical bridge turned separate clues into a unified reconstruction. It pointed to a single, precise calendar date. At approximately 9 p.m. local time on the night of January 26, 1700, the locked Cascadia fault lines snapped. The resulting earthquake reached an approximate magnitude of 9.0. Alternative rupture patterns remain possible, including a rapid sequence of smaller earthquakes rather than one massive failure. Yet, the broad Cascadia source conclusion remains solid. The quiet winter that killed the ghost forests finally had an exact date and an exact hour. But reconstructing the past is only the beginning. To understand what this fault is doing today, researchers had to look directly at the active, shifting seafloor. To map this hidden boundary, oceanographers had to build an acoustic image of the deep Earth. In the summer of 2021, the research vessel Marcus G. Langseth sailed on a 41-day mission to scan the plate boundary from Oregon to Vancouver Island. The ship carried a heavy 36 air gun array. By firing these guns, scientists sent high-pressure acoustic pulses down through miles of seawater and deep into the ocean floor. Behind the vessel trailed a 5-mile-long cable packed with 1,200 specialized hydrophones. These sensors caught the returning echoes, recording how the sound bounced off different layers of rock deep within the subsea crust. The resulting profiles provided the first detailed 3-dimensional look at the subduction zone's hidden structure. It revealed that the boundary is not a single clean break. Instead, it is a complex, patched system of distinct segments, each with its own physical traits and friction levels. This complex structure became even more apparent with a startling proposal in April of 2026. Analyzing the high-resolution seismic data, a team of researchers suggested that the descending Juan de Fuca plate is not a monolithic sheet of rock. They proposed that the plate is fracturing under immense geological stress, slowly splitting as it dives into the mantle. According to this tentative finding, a major tear has formed off the coast of Vancouver Island, causing one section of the plate to drop roughly 3.1 miles relative to the rest of the slab. If this proposed tear is verified by independent peer review, it could fundamentally change how scientists understand the fault. A fragmented plate would distribute stress unevenly across the subduction zone, creating barriers that might either block or alter the path of a future earthquake. However, researchers emphasize that a fracturing tectonic plate is not the same thing as an active, runaway earthquake. These structural scans show the shape of the engine. They do not tell us when the engine will start. Far beneath the ocean floor, the history of Cascadia is written in dust and debris. Paleoseismologists hunting for this history look to the deep ocean basin, where they pull long, cylindrical sediment cores from the seafloor. When a massive earthquake shakes the region, it destabilizes underwater slopes. Tons of sand and mud rush down submarine canyons in violent underwater landslides. When these currents settle, they leave behind distinct, coarse layers of sediment known as turbidites. By drilling into these layers, scientists have unlocked a record spanning nearly 10,000 years. Inside these cores, researchers identified between 41 and 43 earthquakes of magnitude 8.2 or larger. But the physical archive is rarely simple. Other prominent studies recognize only 13 to 18 of these major offshore turbidite layers. This discrepancy stems from how different teams define the source of the underwater landslides. Dating these ancient events is also an imperfect science. Radiocarbon calibration carries an age uncertainty of roughly 100 to 200 years for older events. This historical record is what USGS analysts use to calculate the mathematics of our future. It is not a countdown, nor is the fault operating on a strict, predictable schedule. Instead, researchers build probability models. According to the United States Geological Survey, there is a 37% chance of a magnitude 7.1 or greater earthquake striking somewhere along the Cascadia Subduction Zone within the next 50 years. When looking at the northern segment, the math changes. Scientists estimate a 10 to 15% chance of a magnitude 9 or greater rupture on northern Cascadia within that same 50-year window. These percentages represent statistical likelihood within a specific time frame. They do not signal that a disaster is overdue, nor do they predict an exact date. They are simply a measurement of risk, quietly ticking away in the dark. If the locked Cascadia fault snaps in a full-zone rupture, computer models paint a sobering picture of the cascading consequences. According to scenario planning by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the first impact is violent shaking that lasts for several minutes. This prolonged motion immediately threatens regional infrastructure. Bridges, highways, and essential structures are projected to fail under the immense stress. In low-lying urban areas, the ground itself can fail through liquefaction, a process where water-saturated soils temporarily lose their strength and behave like liquid mud. In Seattle, geological mapping highlights severe liquefaction risks in highly populated areas, including South Lake Union, Capitol Hill, the Rainier Valley, and East Seattle. Across the region, the shaking is modeled to trigger massive landslides, blocking transportation corridors and isolating coastal communities. As physical infrastructure collapses, power grids and communication networks go dark. But the earthquake is only the first phase of the disaster. Seafloor displacement instantly generates a massive tsunami. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration simulations estimate that the wave travels through the deep ocean at speeds close to 490 miles per hour. While the offshore wave moves at jetliner speed, the flooding on land is a massive, crushing wall of water. NOAA models estimate these waves could reach heights of 80 to 100 feet along vulnerable coastlines, pushing water up to 10 miles inland through low-lying river systems. Combined, the earthquake and tsunami present a staggering toll. FEMA models estimate that over 1 million buildings would be destroyed or severely damaged, resulting in more than $150 billion in economic losses. The scenario projects approximately 13,000 deaths, 27,000 injuries, and over 1 million displaced people. The actual impact will vary wildly based on local geography and building construction. But for those on the immediate coast, the ultimate challenge is time. With warning windows estimated at mere minutes, the problem of reaching safety becomes a race against the ocean. The M9 Preparedness Project estimates that roughly 70,000 people live within the primary tsunami inundation zone. For these coastal residents, the geology of the Pacific Northwest presents a stark evacuation problem. In many flat, low-lying communities, natural high ground is miles away. When a massive wave is approaching at hundreds of miles per hour, running to safety on foot is a mathematical impossibility. When you cannot outrun the tsunami, you must go up. This is the principle of vertical evacuation, reaching a heavily reinforced, elevated refuge when horizontal escape is completely cut off. In Tokeland, Washington, the Shoalwater Bay Indian tribe confronted this vulnerability directly. Sited on a low, exposed peninsula with no high ground in sight, the tribe led a multi-year effort to plan, fund, and construct a solution. Completed in 2022, their tsunami vertical evacuation tower stands 49 feet tall. Sitting a heavy concrete and steel structure in a subduction zone requires specialized engineering. To ensure the tower resists both intense liquefaction and the massive lateral forces of rushing water, contractors drove heavy steel pilings 52 feet deep into the coastal soil. The platform is designed to provide immediate refuge for roughly 400 people, keeping them safely above the modeled wave heights. But one tower in Tokeland cannot protect the entire coastline. Geographic models suggest that vulnerable Oregon and Washington communities require roughly 50 of these dedicated tsunami refugees to cover the populations currently stranded in low-lying hazard zones. This strategy is heavily inspired by Japan's mature preparedness culture. Following successive historical disasters, Japan integrated comprehensive hazard maps, regular public drills, and dedicated coastal evacuation towers directly into its civic infrastructure. While adapting these measures to the decentralized communities of the Pacific Northwest is a slow, costly process, projects like the Tokeland Tower show what is possible. It does not offer a magic bullet or a perfect guarantee of safety, but it represents a practical, determined effort to survive. We cannot predict when the fault will break, only that the clock is ticking. Our safety relies not on forecasting the next disaster, but on how we prepare today. For now, the ocean remains calm. The coastline is quiet. But deep beneath the Pacific Northwest, the plates are still moving.